I was thinking about how you can get tired of doing something and then you still continue to, I guess, hang on to it because there's this emotional attachment to things. And I guess that's all right, but it can be limiting too. It's like there's these games I've played before and I've really enjoyed them, right? And when I think about those franchises, it evokes this sort of a nostalgia. It feels like it's part of my identity, right? And I just don't want to lose that. So I'll continue to have that feeling that I want to play. I want to be part of those franchises. I don't want to let that go. But then there's a point where maybe I'm not having fun, right? Like maybe it's not actually that great of an experience. Maybe it was a cool experience at a certain juncture in my life, but it's not necessarily all that interesting now, but I still hang on to it, right? And we do that with a lot of things. It's not necessarily just a video game. It could be a hobby. It could be stuff that you put in the storage unit and you hang on to. It could be all sorts of things, right? Well, we have all this baggage we hang on to. And we do it because all of the stuff is connected to a sort of a sense of identity. We think if we let go of those things, then we lose not really the opportunity to engage in an activity, but a part of ourselves. And that leads to a place of clutter in our lives where there's so many things that are sort of on the bucket list. They're stuff that we want to do one day. There's stuff we want to finish one day. They're those half-baked projects. We're gonna come back to it, or maybe we won't, and we'll just keep on talking about it until the end of time. And then there's the real relationships that actually matter, and those real relationships aren't actually rooted in inanimate things. For example, when I think about amazing experiences I used to have playing multiplayer games online with others, it was actually the connection with others that made those amazing experiences. It wasn't really the game. The game was just facilitating something that was meaningful. So what happens when you hang on to the game where you had that good experience, because the experience is gone. The experience existed in the time which was its prime. The experience is no longer a thing. The game might still be there, but the old experience is not. I was thinking about Genshin Impact, for example. It's a game I like. I think it's cool. I think it's lovely. And it was something that was really special at a specific time in my life. When COVID was a thing, it was a new game. It was different than anything I'd played before. It was special, right? And fast forward 5 years, it just doesn't really hit the same. And I want to say that I like it just as much as I liked it before, but the truth is it's kind of just a game now. It isn't that magical experience that it used to be. And I wish that wasn't true on some level, but that is the truth. That doesn't mean that I'm not a fan. I'm a fan. But I don't necessarily have to put all my time into it, you know? It is what it is. It's hard to let go of things, but when you declutter your life, it gives you the liberty to add stuff in that might be more useful or meaningful. And when you add things into your life that are connected to social experiences on some level, things that fit in well with the current life you're living, then it helps you to avoid the burnout where you start to feel like relationships that actually matter with real people become stale because you're so busy trying to juggle a lot of different things. You know, these days I have time to play games whenever I want, pretty much. If I'm not working, I can play a game. In fact, playing games is a good thing for me to do because it saves money, you know? It's not an expensive hobby. Sure, I'll buy a new computer every couple of years, but when you compare it to other things like eating out all the time or doing things that are, you know, every single day consuming dollars, gaming is really affordable. It's actually a great way to entertain yourself and save money. But when you think about time commitments, though, a lot of people say, well, you know, if you're a gamer, you don't have time for your family, or vice versa. If you have a family, you don't have time to game, right? That's a concern. But that's not really true either. You know, like, you could think about what suits your life. You know, like, there's some things that maybe don't suit your life very well if you have other commitments, like games where you have to log into a match and then you're going to let down your teammates if you log off in the middle of it. But you can still do something like what I love to do, playing an MMO where you're just passively farming some materials or chatting with people in the global chat. And if you want to log off because something comes up, then just log off. It doesn't really matter. You know, like just finding things that suit your life well, that's important. Instead of hanging on to things, feeling like you have to, I guess, put a moment in time in stasis and then try to make sure that you never lose those things that used to give you good vibes before. And being faithful to things is not the same as being faithful to people, because people grow and evolve. Things are just a language. It's like the difference between the story in a book and the letters in a word. You use language to tell a story, but the language is not itself the story. And when we have things that we enjoy in life, those are things that can facilitate a story that's meaningful, but they aren't the story itself. The story itself are the experiences we have along the way. And to shift gears a little bit, I was also thinking today about just how grace plays a role in our lives, to put things in our lives when we need them, how we need them. And the truth is, when you look around the room, if you will, at yourself, at other people, you realize every single one of us is where we are, not because we have this amazing scorecard of skills or abilities or are so very extraordinary. We are where we are because of some kind of grace that was afforded to us. And it's important to remember that, because sometimes we embrace that attitude that you gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps, if you will. You've gotta forge a way forward, and that's all on you. But the truth is, we are where we are because somebody decided to show us some grace. And when you realize that, then gratitude, of course, becomes an imperative. And you realize that it's all about giving people a hand upwards and being thankful for the people who have given you a hand upwards. Not really so much saying, oh, well, I need to be more than what I am, or I'm going to judge others for not being more than what they are. Like, we should be gracious to other people, and we should be gracious to ourselves, and leave room for that attitude that Providence will guide our paths We wouldn't have any blessings in our life if it was just purely, sheerly our own merit that we were relying on. And that ties in well with, what kind of things do we prioritize in our life? Do we prioritize respect for others? Do we prioritize social connections? Do we prioritize things which give us the exposure to new experiences, new things? Or do we sort of recoil back into our echo chambers of whatever is familiar, kind of where everything is Groundhog Day because we're never willing to embrace anything new in our lives? I was thinking about that as I was watching some movies that I never even heard of before. I was watching the movie Into the Wild. It was actually not a movie that was on my bucket list to watch. I didn't know it was a thing until my neighbor actually gave me this DVD and was like, you should watch that. I was like, oh, okay. So I watched it and I thought, wow, that was a really, really thought-provoking movie. And I was talking about it to one of my coworkers, and she was like, you should watch Gattaca. And so I watched that this evening, and it's about this guy who is in a futuristic kind of a time frame where people are profiled on a basis of their genetic makeup, and there's like gene therapy. So whenever a kid is born, they're already kind of programmed to be free of imperfections. And if you aren't one of those superhuman kind of people, and you're just a normal natural birth person, then you don't have a place in society, which is an interesting thing to think about. But anyway, it's about this guy that sneaks his way into the space program by kind of being an imposter, basically. And it's a thought-provoking, inspiring film, actually, but it's also a movie I never would have even thought about if it weren't for someone saying, hey, you should watch that. And so I watched it. I thought it was really a thought-provoking and beautiful film about not giving up on your dreams, even if it feels like you are maybe not in a position where you have opportunities. Like sometimes you have to not give up on yourself, and you can go further than you would ever imagine. But again, it is a story which is also about, in the end, it's about having grace to be shown mercy by people along the way, because no matter how much you think that's all about you, we all go through times where we're nothing, if not for somebody who shows us mercy when they could show us the harshness of the law. We are always in some way at the mercy of people who, give us a chance when the world is maybe a little bit cruel and harsh and not inclined to give us a chance. And I think about that when I think about stuff like work opportunities, or even just opportunities to make connections with other people. Like, I can't begin to express the sense of gratitude that I have toward people who are kind and patient and inclined to give me a true opportunity to grow or to connect when they really don't have to. And that's a huge thing. And in the end, we're not gonna remember or even be judged on a basis of hard skills, qualifications you put on a resume. The things that you really remember are when someone shows you kindness, when someone gives you a spot at the table. I was in our class, we were talking about, like, you know, like we're just talking about all different normal things going on in people's lives, and one of my classmates, she was talking about, like, just, you know, chaotic stuff going on with her family, and I was thinking about that. I was thinking, you know, it's crazy how, you know, you can hear about all of the shenanigans that people go through with their families. You know, somebody yells at somebody and there's some chaos and all different things happen. But then you can always tell when there's a story of love behind all of it. When people have family that they love and they accept each other and they're there for each other no matter what. You know, it doesn't matter how much chaos there is if there's an underlying foundation of love for one another that is in the heart of it. And no amount of chaos and maybe even a little bit of a loss of sanity is too much to bear when you love one another. And that's something where, like, to contrast it doesn't also matter how much you can, you know, buy things you want and do whatever you want and be free to have your life exactly like you want it. If you're living your life as an island, or you're living your life alone and you're not, you know, part of something greater than yourself. So looking for opportunities to be part of something greater than yourself, so important. And also looking for opportunities to, you know, to include others so that maybe they can have opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. Both of those things are important. They go hand in hand, two sides of the same coin. To be gracious, to be generous with your life, with your time, and to look for opportunities to build beautiful things out of imperfect things. And as with all things, when we're building things, you can't build new things if you're completely consumed with old things. You can't light a candle if you have no light to share. You can't share wealth if you are bankrupt spiritually. So letting go of physical things so that we can have more room in our hearts for spiritual things, that's important. And that's something that I'll continue to think a lot about as I try to make sure my life is right-sided, make sure that I have a life that feels like it's got cohesion and peace in it. Sometimes you have to let go of all the things that you've hung on to for a long time, because even if something has served you in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be there serving you in the future, you know? And that's kind of hard. It's hard to let go of things because we feel like we are maybe letting go of an important part of who we are. But, you know, sometimes you have to let go of a part of who you are so that you can be present in the process of evolving into the person that you're meant to be. Sometimes you have to take some clutter away so that you have room to share space with others. And so, you know, maybe it's playing fewer video games and enjoying a few and letting go of some of those titles that you've always loved, but, you know, they've had their run. Maybe it's letting go of some of those old relationships that they were pretty great before, but they're not there anymore. And as long as you're defining your life by those old things, you know, those old flames that are going to keep you from ever lighting new ones, well, it's just not healthy to dwell on the past and forget to live in the present. So let every day be a fresh day. As always, good luck on your adventure wherever you find yourself. Till next time. Thanks so much for watching.